Put your seatbelts on and get ready for the ride. We're the freaking New York Jets, so we're built for this shit.
Hello and welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Monday, March 17th. This is episode 511 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you, as always, for joining me. For those tuning in on YouTube, make sure to please like and subscribe. Of course, appreciate all of those tuning in on all the different audio podcast platforms. And today, it is Monday, and you know what that means. It is another mock draft Monday, and today we've got a brand new mock draft for you, brand new mock draft Monday edition. It is the Tyler Warren edition today on the podcast. You also want to call this maybe the post-free agency edition for the New York Jets, as well, as it has officially been 1 week of free agency so far. As this time last week, the legal tampering period was beginning. Still expect some more moves to happen. There's always sort of that second wave of free agency that takes place. It feels like, though, the Jets are kind of continuing on their path of signing young depth pieces on cheap contracts where they could potentially find some of their upside, tap into some untapped potential, and potentially play bigger roles here down the road for this team. But today I want to get into some draft stuff, so we'll dive right into it here. It is the Tyler Warren edition. Fired up the mock draft earlier today, and we're going to roll with the tight end here out of Penn State, first round pick, 7th overall, 6'5", 256 pounds senior. And Tyler Warren's a tight end, a player that a lot of Jet fans like. I like him a lot. He's a name that I would definitely be interested there at pick number 7. There's been a lot of names floated out, right? Tet McMillan, we've talked about. Mason Graham, we've talked about. Tyler Warren, we're going to discuss today. Armin Benbu as well from Missouri is a name that we'll start to dive a little bit more into here as the week goes on, as the Jets look to try and find their right tackle. But when you look at free agency so far and you just look at the Jets tight end room as a whole right now, they need a lot of help. And Tyler Warren would fill the massive hole that the Jets currently have at tight end instantly if they decide to make this pick. He is by far the best tight end in this draft, by far the most complete tight end in this draft. And I don't think that is really much of a surprise to anybody that has watched a bit of Tyler Warren or has even just done some light scouting on the draft this year. You look at his numbers last season, 104 receptions. That was tied for second in all of college football. He had 1,233 receiving yards, which was second among tight ends. And his 8 touchdowns were tied for third among tight ends in the nation last year. You look at some of his other numbers, 91.3 overall Pro Football Focus grade, which is just crazy. A massive increase from where he was his first, or rather 2022 and 2023. His 93.4 receiving grade, near the top 90th percentile in among tight ends with at least 25 plus targets. He also had a 61.9% contested catch rate and just a 2.8% drop rate. And I think you look at some of the other numbers that Warren brings to the table before we even just break down some of the eye test stuff. Had 19 missed tackles last year, which was second among tight ends. He also registered 115 deep yards, 5 deep catches, which was tied for 9th among tight ends. And I think one of his more underrated abilities was contested catches. He had 13 in 2024, which was third among tight ends, again, with 25 plus targets in 2024. By far the most complete player. And you look at this guy, you look at what the Jets need. They need that legitimate pass-catching threat. They need a legitimate threat at tight end. You also need a guy at tight end too. Now, Warren's best ability is his pass catching, but his run blocking ability and his ability to be a blocker is still a strength of his. And something, again, why he is so complete, where you're getting a guy that can block. The Jets are going to run the football a lot, and you're also getting a guy that can be a threat in the red zone. The Jets' red zone production has been massively disappointing the last couple seasons. It's also been massively disappointing from a tight end perspective, where you have barely seen Conklin get involved in the red zone. Warren is a guy that contested catchability, inside the 20s, physical player, can also bring that to the table. You look at some of the other strengths. Strong hands. We just talked about the physicality. I think the one thing you look at Tyler Warren that you can probably critique would be his overall route tree. He is a threat as a receiver, but his route tree and his route running is not necessarily the strength of his game. That would probably be one of the only weaknesses that you can really take from his game when you watch the tape and, of course, look at the numbers as well. I'll throw this one out there as well, just from a run blocking perspective. While that's not what he's necessarily known for, he is still kind of an underrated run blocker in a way. I think a lot of people overlook at times what Warren can do from a run blocker. Was 51st percentile last year in positively graded run blocking plays, which was above average. I'll also throw this out there. His threat percentage was 16.1% in 2023. You fast forward a year later, that was up 14% to 30.2% last year in 2024. So it's simple. Warren's a do-it-all tight end. Jets desperately need tight end help. You haven't brought back Conklin yet. We'll see what happens. Juwan Johnson, who was a name that was linked to the Jets, goes back to New Orleans. You did add Stone Smart, but that's a 1-year cheap sort of low risk, sort of high reward signing. If we're being honest, Stone Smart, although he does have a very good name, right? I don't think you should expect much out of him. And then Jeremy Ruckert's given you absolutely nothing so far in his career, and maybe a guy that's at risk of not even making the roster with a new regime coming in. Warren fills that massive hole. So round 1, pick 7, Tyler Warren in today's mock draft. Now moving on here, day 2. We'll start off day 2 with some more pass catching offensive help here for the New York Jets. Round 2, pick 42, Alec I.E. Manor, wide receiver from Stanford. Comes in at 6'2", 206 pounds. Redshirt sophomore, kind of on the younger side of things from a college football playing perspective. Has only played 2 years in college so far and has impressed in his 2 seasons. Very consistent play, I would say, over the last 2 years. A lot of good positives. Maybe a slight drop off this year in just some of the numbers. But that was mainly, especially if you watch him, a lot of what he was doing well in 2022 was more of a lot of what he was doing well in 2023 that maybe saw a little bit of a drop off this year in 2024 in terms of production was sort of the way Stanford was running their offense. They kind of had a schematic change, and I.E. Manor was a guy that sort of was hurt by it as opposed to benefited from it. And I think that should not be really much of a concern at all for this prospect here on day 2, a guy still with loads of talent who still had a productive season last year despite sort of what Stanford changed in their offense that didn't necessarily benefit him from a production standpoint. You look at his 2 seasons in college football, very good numbers. 125 receptions, 1,844 yards, 14.8 yards per reception, and 12 touchdowns. And he's been one of the more underrated receivers in college football, really, when you look at some of the rankings. Has been able to place top 10 in back-to-back years in his conference in some of these receiving categories. You look at 2023 when the Pac-12 was still a thing. He was tied for 10th in receptions and 7th in yards. And in last year when Stanford made the move to the ACC, he was tied, or rather, he was 9th in receptions and 8th in yards. So was a top 10 receiver in his conference in back-to-back years, Pac-12 and in the ACC. PFF grades were very similar. 2 very solid years from him. Really, 2 very, very good years. Even though the yards last year took a slight dip, receptions were the same. Targets were about the same. I think just some of the yards was more of the offense around him than himself, if that makes sense, like I mentioned. Some other numbers here. 74.3 receiving grade, a 76.9 grade versus man coverage. Had a 48.3 contested catch rate, which was slightly above average. As a whole, had 14 contested catches, which was tied for 24th among all wide receivers. And his contested catch ability is actually one of his greatest strengths and something that I wanted to talk about. You look at some of his strengths and why I think he actually fits really well for the Jets is he's your prototypical X wide receiver. And you need a new X. You need a quality X next to Garrett Wilson. And I think I.E. Manor being that X receiver with some size, with some of that contested catchability is something that I think could really benefit Garrett and also, of course, benefit him as well. Very good football IQ and is very good against press coverage. Some of the weaknesses, can struggle sometimes to change direction. And while he is good against press coverage, he does sometimes have struggle against just single coverage. But a very good collegiate career in 2 years. And again, like this, his size is actually pretty like solid. I mean, he's 6'2", 210, which I guess kind of just looking at that might not seem like this big 6'5" massive receiver. But he plays big and he's physical. He's smart, can line up at the X, which is perfectly aligned with what you'd want next to Garrett Wilson. So I think the biggest thing is with Jet fans, right? Taking a receiver day 2, it's just hoping that he finally, a day 2 wide receiver finally hits. The days of taking wide receivers in the middle rounds, history is not on the Jets side. If you take Alec, i.e. Manor here, you hope it's finally the start of a nice find in day 2 that can complement well with Garrett Wilson and, of course, add some more to this passing offense with Fields now at quarterback, who needs more weapons around him. So first 2 things here, right? Talk about the reasoning of this. You needed a tight end. You get that in Tyler Warren. Jets haven't addressed the tight end much in free agency. And you look at the free agent market right now for wide receiver, it's getting very thin. I thought for sure they would sign somebody like a Tim Patrick, even a Joshua Palmer. That did not happen. Palmer goes to Buffalo. Patrick returns to Detroit. So you sign Tyler Johnson, but if we're being realistic, that's probably a wide receiver 4 with maybe wide receiver 3 upside. You still need a lot of wide receiver help. Alec, i.e. Manor, provides that here on day number 2. Pick 42nd overall. Moving on now, we'll stick to the offensive side of the football. And don't worry, for the people that want defense and want some defensive help in some big spots, we'll get to that here in a second. But staying on day 2, last pick here of day 2. First time we're doing one of these mock drafts where the Jets have the 73rd overall pick in round 3 as opposed to the 92nd overall pick. Of course, when the Geno Smith trade was made with the Seahawks and the Raiders forever, everybody thought the Jets had the 92nd overall pick. Come to find out, they actually had the 73rd overall pick in the draft. And 92nd was actually Seattle's, or Vegas, rather. So that was a nice change. You move up 19 picks here. With that 3rd round pick, 73rd overall, the Jets here, we're going to take some right tackle help. Continuing to fill needs on the offensive side of the football. Ozzie Trapilo, tackle out of Boston College, 6'8", 316 pounds, a tall tackle here, senior. This to me, I mentioned a couple guys that I really like in this draft. I've talked about it a lot. Right tackle. I think there's a lot of Jet fans that are looking at the tackles and saying, draft this guy, draft this guy, draft that guy. And yeah, while there is a couple really good left tackles, the Jets need a right tackle. And I think there's a lot of people that are just saying, oh, draft the left tackle and then bring him in and have him develop and switch him into a right tackle. While that sounds fine on the surface, personally, I'm in the boat of just draft the right tackle and bring him in as that's his primary position. I'm more on board with that than drafting a left tackle where then he's got to switch to right tackle because you don't need a left tackle. And Ozzie Trapilo is arguably one of the more talented right tackles that you can get on day number 2. Look at his snap counts over his years at Boston College. And actually, what's interesting about Ozzie Trapilo, he does have some versatility. He did actually play left tackle. He started as a left tackle in 2022 and then switched to right tackle in 2023. Played 727 snaps at right tackle in 2023. He also had 2 snaps that year at left guard. And then last year played 756 snaps at right tackle. So the last 2 years has played well over 700 snaps in 24 games played in each of the past 2 seasons at right tackle. And going back to 2022, does have some experience at left tackle. But you're bringing in a guy that plays right tackle, has played right tackle the last 2 years. That's his primary position, and he's done very well with it. An 80.5 pass block grade, a 69.9 run blocking grade, a 70.4 gap grade, a 78.2 true pass set pass block grade, and last season had his best PFF grade in his career overall at 76.8. Allowed 12 QB hurries last year, just 2 sacks and 1 QB hit. Did not allow a single sack in 2023. And he's been a lot better actually at right tackle than he was at left tackle. His 1 year at left tackle, he allowed 5 quarterback hits, 5 sacks, and 17 hurries. You've seen much better numbers. Just 2 sacks the last 2 years, only 4 quarterback hits and 20 hurries as opposed to the 17 that he had in one season. This to me is a guy, even though you're getting him on day 2, this to me is a guy that can come in and start right away, especially when you look at the competition. Carter Warren, Max Mitchell, you signed Chuck Okafor. He got benched 12 games into last year. Probably not going to win it out. I think Ozzie Trapilo is a guy that can come in as a day 2 pick and win out the job. And you look at this offensive line, and you've got 2 young tackles. You've got a center entering year number 3. And you've got a guard in John Simpson who's in the prime of his career right now. Seems like he's sort of just taking off. And AVT, who when healthy, is very good. You like that outlook of that offensive line. And the Jets also, let's be honest, they've got to start finding middle round offensive linemen. I'm so sick of the days of drafting offensive linemen on day 2 and day 3, and the guys kind of just get lost. Like, you got to start hitting on some of these mid-round offensive linemen. You shouldn't always have to take an offensive lineman in the first round and hope it works. There's good offensive linemen in the middle rounds. You got to go find them. Ozzie Trapilo here is the pick in round 3. Moving on now to day number 3, shifting on over, getting some defensive help here. Jonas Sanker, safety out of Virginia. We've talked about him here on previous episodes. Again, I try and get many different names, just the way the board fell out here. Jonas Sanker was really the best safety available here for the Jets, and something that I think if he would fall in this spot, I think you're going to want the Jets to take him. So that's what I decided to do. I could have went with some other names, but I figured go with the guy that I would personally pick if put in the situation. Jonas Sanker, we've talked about him again, 6 foot, 206 pounds, senior, really has taken off the last 2 years at Virginia. Has played, his entire collegiate career at Virginia. First year really didn't play a whole lot. Second year played a little bit more, but 2023 to 2024, you saw the big takeoff. Combined in those 2 years, he had 205 tackles, 139 solo tackles, which led the conference during those 2 seasons. 13 tackles for loss, 15 passes defended, and 1 interception. He also had 98 total tackles in 2024, 4 passes defended, 2 sacks, 99 tackles for loss, and that 1 pick. Some other numbers. He was first among safeties in the ACC in total tackles in 2023, and was second in 2024. And the reason I bring some of this tackling stuff up is he is excellent against the run. Excellent against the run. Specifically against when it comes to collapsing and going downhill and collapsing and clogging running lanes. Something Jonas Sanker is very, very good at. He's also versatile. He can play too high. He can play the nickel, provides a little bit of versatility there in the back end. And you look at the way the safety room right now is constructed. Andre Cisco comes in as sort of your, strong safety. And then you add, or you could throw Jonas Sanker there into the mix there at free safety. You obviously also brought back Tony Adams, but you still need some more safety help. And I think you can make the case a Jonas Sanker, Andre Cisco safety week 1 starting pairing is certainly possible. Not even just Sanker, but I think anybody that you potentially draft here around this time of the draft, late day 2, early day 3 with this first 4th round pick and only 4th round pick, I think you could see that combination happening. But I like the fact that he's good against the run. Something the Jets struggled with, especially something the Jets safeties have struggled with, is missed tackles and against the run. Jonas Sanker at times can over pursue plays, and you hope that the coaching staff can kind of dial him back a little bit. I think it's similar to what we talked about with Quincy Williams, his first year with the Jets. Brought a lot of speed, could, clog up running lanes and all that, but sometimes can over pursue the play and not necessarily set his feet and get caught into bad spots. Development-wise, that's something that you got to work on. I would also throw this out there and say, and there's a lot of guys, I think really just, you look at a lot of the safeties and even just linebackers in general this time of the draft, oftentimes they struggle with getting their eyes caught in the backfield and they kind of lose sight of their zone. Like they try and read the quarterback too much that they get their eyes stuck in the backfield and there's a hole in their zone. And they don't necessarily, they kind of lose attention to who they've got to pick up. And sometimes you can have some of those issues in coverage. And I think those are things that you're going to have to work on. But it's safety help, and I really like him. And I think this is very good value, getting him on day 3, because I do think there's a chance that he maybe slips on day 2. Him, Andrew Makuba from Texas, 2 guys that I really like. Chance that they fall day 2 or land on day 2, chance they end up here early day 3. But Jonas Sanker, I think if you're a Jet fan, you'd be happy with this. Moving on now, final 4 picks. Round 5, pick 145, 2 5th-round picks. First one here, going to get some defensive line help. Don't worry. Do not forget about the defensive line. Jets haven't added a ton to the defensive line, really, this free agency, right? You added Rashad Weaver, you added Byron Coart, but no big names, right? I think Levi Onwuzurike was a name that a lot of us Jet fans thought they could potentially add. They didn't. More of those small 1-year contracts for guys that are kind of that maybe you can find some, upside in them and develop them into something bigger. Coart obviously was with the Bears last year. Actually had one of his better seasons for his standards with Eric Washington, who is now the Jets defensive line coach. So you have that connection. They also signed a Jay Tafule and Derek Noddy from Kansas City, who's more of your run stuffer. So they have added some help, but I still don't think it can hurt to add some more interior defensive line help. This is a team that you're going to want to be physical. The Jets got pushed around this year. I don't think it can hurt to just continue to add bodies, especially this point in the draft where it's day 3. I think instead of trying to find the best pass rusher, trying to find the best run stuffer at this point, I think anything you can get and just adding bodies at this point in the draft, I think, is sort of where the Jets could end up. With Simeon Barrow Jr., defensive lineman here out of Miami, is who we select. 6'3", 290, redshirt senior. Just some background, played 3 seasons at Michigan State, then transferred to Miami for the 2024 season. And last year at Miami, had a very productive year. 30 tackles, 5.5 sacks, 8 tackles for loss, 21 quarterback hurries, and 2 QB hits. His career stats, 140 total tackles, 16 sacks, 27 tackles for loss, 57 QB hits, or QB hurries rather, and 9 quarterback hits. Simeon Barrow is an interesting prospect because his strength is against the run. And you look at his run defense numbers, they're very good. Has a 7.8% run stop rate last year and had an 84 run defense grade. He had an 80.8 overall grade, a 72.1 pass rush grade, a 68.6 true pass set pass rush grade, and 11.3 pass rush win rate. Very good against the run. That's his strength. One thing that has kind of been known, I guess, as his weakness would be his pass rushing ability. It's kind of been inconsistent, but why I think he's an interesting prospect is he's coming off of his best season from a pass rushing perspective. He's 21 QB hurries and his 5.5 sacks were both career highs. And you look at the PFF, just some of the numbers, and I know grades aren't the biggest thing, but you just look at the win rate, 11.3% was near the top percentile, well above average in the actual kind of elite category among defensive linemen last year that had 300 plus snaps. So the reason why I think this is an intriguing name is because very good against the run, which the Jets need run defense help, but also a guy last year that showed a lot more potential from as a pass rusher than he did in his previous 3 years of college. And maybe that's more of Miami and transferring, or maybe it's he found something, but that's what makes him interesting. Is you're getting a guy that's very good against the run, but maybe his pass rushing started to come along. And if that can transfer to the NFL game, you're getting a guy that can do 2 things very well for a day 3 5th round pick. So again, my whole thing here is just continue to add bodies. I'd also say this is Simeon Barrow. You watch him, he's relentless. He's relentless, downhill, might not have the most tools, might not have the most repertoire, might not be the most athletic, but he's relentless. He is a guy that is going to just come at you and do everything he can to either stop the run, get to the quarterback, whatever. So that's your 5th round pick. Second 5th round pick here. We've talked about this guy before. I could have went in a couple different directions. Again, this is sort of just the way the board fell in this mock draft. Today, I could go wide receiver here. I don't think it would hurt to go pick up another wide receiver at this point in the draft, especially if the Jets don't really sign anybody else, because just drafting one wide receiver might not be enough. So I could see that, but we're going to go back to the well here with Kobe King. We've talked about him a little bit. I really like Kobe King, linebacker here out of Penn State. 6'1", 236 pounds, redshirt junior. The thing with Kobe King is, the Jets added Jamie Sherwood. I still think, though, you look at the Jets linebacker depth as a whole, I still don't think it can hurt to add some more depth, right? You have Jamie Sherwood, you have Quincy Williams, 2 very, very good players. You're 1-2 punch, right? You just extended Sherwood. You hope that Quincy Williams stays here long term. Got 1 year left on that 3-year deal that he signed. So you're looking at, he's in the final year of his contract. Do you give him a raise? How does that all play out with the Sherwood contract? We'll see. But Quincy Williams' future either way is he's on the last year of his contract. And I know this is more of a 2026 thing, but hopefully he's here long term. Either way, though, this is it for him from this contract. Maybe you extend him, give him a raise, whatever. But just depth-wise this year and then even down the road, I don't think it can hurt to bring in another linebacker. I know the Jets re-signed Jamin Davis, who they picked up late last year. I know you have Chaz Surratt, who's mainly a special teams guy, but outside of that, it's not great. I mean, you've got Zaire Barnes, who hasn't really done much of anything coming out of Western Michigan. Marcelino McCray-Ball doesn't do much. I mean, it's pretty thin behind Sherwood and Quincy Williams. So I don't think it can hurt to add a guy like Kobe King. You look at his 2024 numbers, 97 tackles, 53 solo tackles, 1 pass defended, 9 tackles for loss. Was second on the team in total tackles and solo tackles. Was a productive player. His strengths, again, he's good against the run, which I like. The Jets need to be better against the run. He's got a high football IQ and a good downhill tackler. Not the best pass rusher and can struggle in coverage. But he's depth. He's a day 3 pick. Yeah, I don't think it can hurt to take a flyer on a linebacker and bring him in and see where you're at here. Kind of just, right? You picked up Zaire Barnes in the 6th round, 2023. Hasn't done anything. The depth is kind of Kobe King, bring him in, take a flyer on him. That's where I go here. All right, final 2 picks, both in round 6. Pick 186 here in round 6. We're going to go back to the defensive line. Tonka Hemingway, South Carolina defensive lineman, 6'3", 284 pounds, senior. Spent all 5 seasons at South Carolina. Sort of a rarity these days. The way NIL is in college football, you don't oftentimes see guys spend 5 years at the same school, but Tonka Hemingway did. Just some of the numbers here. 2024 had 4 sacks, 19 QB hurries, 5 quarterback hits, 4 tackles for loss. You really started to see Hemingway produce in 2022, the first 2 years of his career in 2020 and 2021 as a freshman and a sophomore redshirt, or as a freshman and a sophomore. Didn't do a whole lot, but junior year you saw the production start to increase. So you look at those numbers from 2022 till now. In that span of time, 90 total tackles, 9.5 sacks, 17 tackles for loss, 54 quarterback hurries, and 13 QB hits. He finished last year with a 70.9 PFF grade, a 73.5 pass rush grade, 74.9 true pass rush grade, and a 10.6 pass rush win rate. Now, Tonka Hemingway is the complete opposite of Simeon Barrow. Part of the reason I drafted these 2 guys. I took a guy in Barrow who to me is a little bit more complete, still needs to show a little bit more as a pass rusher, but is coming off of his best season as a pass rusher as he enters the draft. Tonka Hemingway is strictly a pass rusher. From Simeon Barrow, more of your run stopper. Tonka Hemingway is more your pass rusher. The run defense numbers are sort of ugly. They're not great. 65.2 run defense grade was below average, and he just had a 3.5% run stop rate, which PFF has different measurables. That is in the orange section, which is not where you want to be. Let's just put it simple. Hemingway's a guy that would come in as a pass rusher who's got a lot of talent from that perspective, can get to the quarterback, right? You look at his, numbers, 54 quarterback hurries, 13 QB hits, since 2022. Both, I think, very good things. 4 sacks last year, which was tied for his career high. Does a lot of really good things, but the run defense needs a lot of help. He does have a high football IQ. Something else I do like about Hemingway, you guys know this about me. When you get to this late part of the draft, I like to take guys that actually have some versatility. Hemingway does. He can line up in multiple different spots. B gap, has lined up at the A gap, lined up over the tackle, off ball, outside tackle, has done that a lot in his career in many different spots. I mean, he's lined up A gap, B gap, over tackles, outside tackle, off ball a handful of times throughout his career. So mainly in the B gap. But 2022 had 117 snaps outside the tackle, had 93 snaps in the A gap in 2023, 61 in 2023 had over tackle. So could do a whole lot. Versatile. So, 6th round pick, Tonka Hemingway. Pass rusher, doesn't provide much run defense. That's why you take Simeon Barrow, and of course, everybody else that's already there. Final pick here, round 6, 207. We're going to go with interior offensive line help. Miles Frazier. Now, of course, the Jets did, sign Josh Myers, former teammate of Justin Fields, Garrett Wilson, same draft class as Fields, of course, in 2021. Been a common theme for the Jets free agency, signing a ton of guys from the 2021 draft. Myers can sort of come in and maybe fill that Wes Schweitzer role, has some experience of playing guard back to his college and high school days, has played, center strictly with Green Bay, but can provide some versatility. Miles Frazier, that's what we're going to roll with here. Guard out of LSU, 6'6", 317, senior. Spent the first 2 years of his college career at FAU before transferring to LSU in 2022, where he has played the last 3 seasons there. I'll tell you what, this LSU offensive line, man, you've got a lot of really, really good pieces coming out of this draft from LSU, right? Will Campbell, of course, is the biggest one. You also have Emory Jones, Miles Frazier, a lot of guys from that offensive line that will be playing on Sundays here in just a matter of time. I know you could go in different directions here. The reason I pick up Frazier is, again, they did sign Myers, but you do still have some questions interior for the Jets. And one thing I like about Frazier a lot is he's very versatile. He's played left guard. He's played right guard. He's played right tackle. He's played left tackle. The only position that he has not logged snaps at is center. This is a guy that played everywhere in college. Primarily a left guard, or right guard, rather. Primarily plays right guard. Last season was right guard and a little bit of right tackle. But has experience of right tackle, has experience of left guard. Primarily an interior offensive line guy, but a guy that can slide out if needed to either the tackle spots. I like that. Versatility, depth option, late round pick, take a flyer. I don't think it can hurt. You can never have enough bodies up front on the offensive line. You can never have enough bodies up front on the defensive line, especially with the way this Jets offense is going to be run. It's a downhill rushing offense led by Justin Fields, Breece Hall, and Braylon Allen. Guys go down up front. You want good depth. Add Miles Frazier. Take a flyer on him. Is he perfect? No. But does he provide some versatility? Play multiple different spots? Yes. It's a 6th round pick. You take a chance on him. Finish out the draft that way. So, to close things out, we'll throw the draft up here on the screen one more time. Here it is. PFF doesn't love the Tyler Warren pick just because of the fact that I took him over Mason Graham. I forget who else. 2 other guys are ranked ahead of him. PFF likes to go a lot by the rankings, not necessarily team needs. So Warren gets a C+. I think every Jet fan would agree, though. That draft pick would be a lot better than a C+. So Warren, Alec, I.E. Manor, A, Ozzie Trapilo, A-, Jonas Sanker, C+, Simeon Barrow Jr., B, Kobe King, B-, Tonka Hemingway, A-, Miles Frazier, C+. Overall, a B. But again, I think Tyler Warren really should be an A. I mean, you're getting the best tight end in the draft. You're filling a massive hole. So there's the draft. Let me know what you think. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Indifferent? Want to drop any of your thoughts? Let me know in the comments section down below. I love hearing from all of you. Of course, appreciate the support. And yeah, another mock draft Monday in the books. So we'll be back the rest of the week with a ton of content coming your way. So stay tuned. And until next time, Jets, 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 Jets.